Have you ever had a car stop you dead in your tracks? It happened a lot as a kid, right? Because everything's just so new to you. Then over time, you see more and more until you get to a point where, okay, maybe you haven't seen it all, but a lot of cars have lost that spark. There are some you might see that'll make you do a double take, sure, but nothing quite like that kid looking into the dealership window meme, right? So never in my wildest dreams did I think, at the grand old age of 25, I had experienced that same level of awe again. That childhood wonder I thought I had lost. A car that would inspire a brand new dream car in me. I honestly didn't even think that was possible. I just thought we all kind of agreed to pick our dream cars as kids and just keep them for life. Now, this particular car, it's not something new to me. I've always thought these cars were cool. And sure, if I had all the money in the world, it'd be awesome to own one, but it was never a dream car that I was actually aspiring to obtain someday. Until one night in Odaiba, January 9th, 2025 at 5:33 p.m, I tapped my Ioka card to exit Aomi Station. And as I walked down the mezzanine a little early for the car meet I was headed to, I saw it. Like a lone sunflower in a field or a lone star in the night sky, I came face to face with a new goal that'll likely continue to outrun my income as it slowly appreciates more over time. A bright yellow Veilside Fortune Maesty Honda NSX. I can show you pictures I captured of that moment. I can show you pictures from other perspectives showing exactly where I was standing at that moment. But to really immerse you in it and show you how it felt, I can give you a taste of that moment from a movie you've likely seen before. An absolutely iconic scene, the scene that cemented Veilside and JDM car culture into the broader world for the very first time, the scene where we see Han standing by his Veilside Fortune RX-7 in Fast and Furious Tokyo Drift. The way we all saw that as a kid is exactly the way I saw this NSX as a grown tax-paying adult. It's like the whole world around it turned to grey and you were just mesmerized by this one pop of color. Now sure, in retrospect it is kind of weird seeing a fully grown man pick up a kid who looks about 25 from high school in this scene. Probably about to say that he looks really mature for his age or something. But in all seriousness, let's just take another look at this shot. The contrast is key to why it works so well and is one of the main reasons why I absolutely love bold colors on cars. The bold colors typically painted on Veilside Fortune kits are honestly as much of a trademark to them as their bold styling. They might be polarizing, but if you want to turn heads, this is how you do it. Now, while this unapologetic approach from Veilside was a statement piece in and of itself, having cars that really stood out from the crowd wasn't a concept people shied away from back in the early 2000s. Just look at the previous two Fast and the Furious movies and every video game or car magazine you can find from the early 2000s for examples. It would only be a decade or so later though that we would see a dramatic shift. An overcorrection of sorts from the craziness of the sex spec era into something that's not quite as bold, maybe something you could even consider boring, but eventually stabilizing into a pretty sweet spot that we're in right about now. Because in case you haven't noticed, we are so back, baby. Let me explain. Starting with a good old-fashioned bell curve that we're going to call the maturing as a car enthusiast curve. Because personally, I'm a visual learner, so maybe this will help you too. On the x-axis, we've got age, and on the y-axis, we've got level of wankiness as a car enthusiast. We start all the way over here with you as a kid. Kids are innocent, naive, they unapologetically like what they like, and that's usually going to be based just on that face value how cool something is. And that's honestly fine, because they're just a kid. It's hard to be very high on the wanker scale when you're not even old enough to do your times tables, let alone be ignorant. Kids are just gonna be kids, and as a young kid, you probably liked exotics like every other kid. All the kids know Lamborghini, Ferrari, and even what a GT3 RS is these days. That's really shot up in popularity. They probably also like extreme wide body kits because they're crazy and bold. Things like Rocket Bunny, Veilside, Liberty Walk, RWB, the list goes on and on. If it's flashy and it stands out, it's far more likely that a kid will love it. Because again, at face value, it simply looks cool, which is a really important distinction. I want you to remember that. As a kid, you take a lot of things at face value because you don't know any better, and that's fine. Then we've got teenagers that sit pretty much right here at the top of the wanker scale. But it's not your fault, little bro. You're still learning, and we all go through it. These are those little fuckers you see in TikTok and Instagram comments that don't even have a car and start saying shit like, bro, your car's not even fast. It doesn't even have 1,000 horsepower. Or this is all show no go. It looks like that to only have 3,000 horsepower. And then they, chuck a skull emoji at the end of it or some shit. A lot of these teens, like I said, don't even have cars yet. And once they do get their first cars, they're probably going to have some kind of cringe mods on it because they just can't afford anything better. They're only working part-time jobs, and hey, that's no fault of their own. Focus on school, do all that stuff. But 9 out of 10 times, when you see a teenager's car, the fitment's usually pretty whack. The wheels are probably reps. The exhaust is usually way too damn loud and raspy because they didn't get a proper exhaust. They just chopped off the cats or the mufflers or the resonator or anything to make it louder. There might be way too many stickers and banners covering the windscreen that you'd wonder how they can ever see out of that thing. And overall, the cars they build are probably not very tasteful. There are some exceptions, obviously, so if you're a teen with a cool car, good on ya. But for the most part, a lot of kids just don't have much money and still want to get in the game and have fun modifying their cars. It's hard to blame them. Even I'm guilty of this when I was like 16 and first getting into cars. And some of the most mid examples you'll see on the road are unfortunately a result of this. But it's a learning curve. We all got to go through it. A lot of these teens are just trying to be cool and fit in. But unlike with kids, teenagers are a little bit older and actually have the opportunity to learn and know better and be quiet when the grown-ups are talking. This time really is just an overload of information in a car enthusiast's life. When you get your first car, you start to learn a lot of things you never knew before, especially things like around maintenance that you just didn't care about as a kid. Then you start to learn about the difference between things that affect performance and things that are just purely for aesthetics. You start to learn how much some parts really cost and just so much more. The only downside is when you're learning so many new things at once, it can introduce a level of arrogance. You learn about a new thing and suddenly it becomes cool to hate on all the other things, especially those things that you liked as a kid, because those things are stupid and for kids. They'll probably start saying stupid shit like Pixar Cars sucks actually, and posting these cringe ass memes like a kid's dream car isn't exotic, this is a real man's dream car, with like a photo of a R34 GTR or like a Dodge Charger or something. Just really depends if they fell into the JDM group or the muscle car group. Hell, they might have even fell into the Euro bandwagon and just has like an E46 M3 as their dream car. Speaking of, a lot of teens also end up treating JDM versus domestic as some sort of Xbox versus PlayStation beef. You'll start to hear them unironically say shit like, oh, there's no replacement for displacement, only milk comes in 2 liters. At least my car can corner, yours can only go on a straight line, etc, etc. A lot of kids probably just hear jokes like that from older people that they idolize or respect, then not realize it's kind of just coated in a veil of irony and end up making that whole comment their personality. Even I went through it, man. Like as a teenager, I glazed the absolute living shit out of JDM cars. I thought Japanese built cars were God's gift on 4 wheels and that nothing could compete. But eventually, like most people, I actually grew up. And if you are an adult that still thinks in one of those weird purity mindsets, oh man, I think the chart actually just stops here for you. Then we've got young adults, your 18 to 24 year olds, we'll say. They typically sit right around here and can actually come down much lower on the wanker scale. So we'll make this a range. Around this age, as a car enthusiast, you're likely still on your first car with just a bunch of more high quality mods to it, some you've actually researched and saved up for, or you've started working full time and maybe you're on your second, third, fourth, or even fifth car, depending on how quickly you get bored with it. But usually, if you are on your subsequent car from your first, it'll typically be better than your first, a little bit of an upgrade. Not only do your mods get more tasteful and functional, your taste likely opens up a little bit as well. You might get into far more niche car related subcultures like drifting, rally, Formula 1 or GT racing for example, and then start to appreciate cars built for purpose that you never really took a second look at prior. Depending on your experiences, you might develop some really strong opinions on certain cars, but at this point, you usually wouldn't be as much of a blind popular thing equals bad car enthusiast as a teenager was. You're still learning more, but it's not the overload of information it once was. The arrogance begins to fade and you start to actually grow up. You might still call some cars overrated and shit like that and make some dumbass comments, but for the most part, you're getting there. Then we've got the post-25-year-old era, which, like I said, some people in the 18 to 24 range can fit into as well, but these guys are sitting right around here. We've come full circle, right back down to the same low wanker scale as kids. The difference? It's no longer because of naivety. Now you've come to realize all those things you thought were cool as a little kid actually are really cool, but not only at face value. As an adult, you learn what makes them cool, where these cars' flaws and shortcomings are, and if they suit your taste and driving style or not. It's no longer a blind love or hate like the teens, it's now being an educated hater. No, but in all seriousness, at this age, you've likely experienced enough variety in cars to really learn what you like and don't. And truly maturing is realizing there is something to like and appreciate about all well-built cars. From a bone stock 964 Carrera RS to an RWB 997 GT2, there is something to appreciate about both extremes and everything in between. Like with this exact example, personally, I'm not really a huge fan of the RWB GT2. I think less aggressive, molded wide bodies are nicer. My personal preference in RWB land would be something closer to the Promodet 964 or maybe even the Swallowtail. But just because that's my preference doesn't mean the RWB 997 GT2 isn't an insane piece of art in and of itself. Sure, it might drive like shit. I mean, look at the crazy offset on those wheels. I guarantee you stock would probably go faster around the Nürburgring. But at the end of the day, this isn't your car. It wasn't built for the driving or purpose that you want. You want the one that's going to be in the driver's seat, so why do you care? And even as someone who isn't a huge fan of bolt-on fender flares, that doesn't mean if they're done right, they can't look insane in person. Just for example, the sheer street presence from some of these cars that I saw in Japan was insane. They are insanely bold, and a lot of them do have the work done under the hood to back them up. Not that it really even matters anyway. Some people just want a little work of art on wheels that they can daily and not really care about performance numbers. That's perfectly fine. Maturing is acceptance. Cars are built for purpose. Not every car is suited to be a daily. Not every car is a track car. Not every car is a show car. But when cars are built to do well at exactly what the owners want them to do well at, even if that is just look showy and cool, what's there to hate about that? That's the reason it was built. How are you going to get mad at someone for building a flashy car when they had every intention to build a flashy car? While we're still talking about the 25 and up year olds, I think this age also really goes beyond stuff you liked as a kid being cool again and goes even further into cars you would never have taken a second look at as a kid or a teenager, and realizing that they are really awesome too. Using myself as an example, like I said, I'm a self-admitted JDM fanboy. I had a picture of an R32 GTR on my wall. I'll try to find the exact photo I had of the exact R32 GTR I had on my wall. I've seen it on Instagram before. And as that teenager, I would only ever care about Japanese sports cars. But now, oh, now I like it all. A 63 Stingray? Yes, please. A Diablo? Hell yeah. A 996 Turbo? I'll take one in yellow. A Maloo? Send it my way. A Pajero Evo? Hectic. A camping and touring setup on a 79 series? Sounds like a dream. These are all cars I would never have looked at as a teenager because either A, they weren't Japanese, or B, they weren't sports cars. I was blind, and it's super ironic that I spent all this time glorifying JDM only to learn that a lot of Japanese car enthusiasts really love German cars. You see BMWs, Mercs, and so many gorgeous Porsches when you go over there. I do think there's another layer to this though, a really weird phenomenon where people just don't like things that are well and truly out of reach to them. You see it in scenarios as simple as trading card games, like for example in Yu-Gi-Oh! When there are meta cards that are worth hundreds of dollars each, people just find ways to hate on them because they're never going to spend that kind of money on a damn card, when in actuality, the card design and playstyle can be really cool. This same principle kind of translates to cars. If people feel like they would never have the money to blow on modifying a car as boldly as with something like a Veilside, Liberty Walk, or RWB Kit, then they end up just projecting themselves onto the owner and hate the build out of spite because they ruined a car that they liked as is. Same with exotics. It's really easy to just turn your nose up at an exotic car and say built not bought is better when you're just never going to be able to afford an exotic anyway. To be real for a second, yeah, it is true. 99% of us watching this will not ever be able to afford an exotic car. But again, maturing is acceptance. There's no need for the blind hate. Appreciation at the end of the day is a far richer currency to give out. There's a place on the tarmac for both the 1000 horsepower Evo and the bone stock 488. Hey, you watching this, I'm gonna have to ask a real big favor. If you're enjoying this content and want to see more of it, please like the video so it gets spread to more people, leave a comment, and subscribe to the channel if you want to see more of it. Every little bit of interaction is appreciated. So that was a really long-winded way of over-explaining this meme I saw a couple of months back and kind of warping it to fit the context of this video. But I do think it was super important to lay that groundwork first, because it leads me so nicely into this shift we've seen in modern car culture. What's cool in modern car culture is starting to change, because a lot of Gen Z who were obviously still really young but did still grow up with the Fast and the Furious movies, Need for Speed games, Sex Spec, Crazy Car magazines, and all of that jazz are finally in their mid-20s, have decent full-time jobs, and with that comes big boy money. And if they're still living with their parents rent-free, they may just have more money than they know what to do with. Maybe not enough to buy a house, but more disposable income, with little to no overheads, in an insanely overinflated housing market that is impossible to get into after a whole bunch of inflation and interest rate hikes, means people end up using their money to buy smaller luxuries or investment opportunities, which we will get into a little later. Is this exactly what happened in 2008? I don't know. I was 9 and just begging my mum to get me that new copy of Pokemon Platinum that just came out because it's going to be so different than Diamond and Pearl that came out like a year earlier, while she was probably just over here struggling with her mortgage or something. Who fucking cares about that? But what I know is going back to just before 2008 is how we modify cars. For years now, modern culture leaned towards minimalism. Gone were the wild and bold ways of the 90s and early 2000s. It was time to suppress all of that noise. You would have seen it across fashion, architecture, interior design, graphic design, you name it, it was being minimalified. Being understated and effortless was trend. It was cool to act nonchalant, so much so it became its own fucking meme. But now, we're in the middle of a renaissance. Finally, passion, creativity, and self-expression are making their way back into the mainstream and car culture. In an era of AI slop and people acting like they don't give a fuck, suddenly it's become cool to care again. I'm seeing it everywhere and it's clearly resonating with people. Amazing videos like this one about how you should pursue your interests and actually have a damn personality instead of acting like you just don't care all the time. And this one, literally titled How Trying Became Cool Again, both illustrate my point perfectly, and the views they're racking up just show how much the sentiment is landing. Please go and watch those videos after you watch this one, of course. Save them to like your watch later or whatever you do. Both of them are phenomenal and I wish I could be that concise with my storytelling. But to get back to the topic at hand, we're going to jump back in time to the car scene of the 2010s. Things kept getting wilder and far less refined in these years with the insane stance and rice game of the early 2010s. The mid 2010s is when I got my license, so it's a time in the car scene that I remember really, really well. Picture this: Rihanna, Macklemore, Justin Timberlake, Swedish House Mafia, and Avicii were all in the top charts. All of the girls in your school were very much into Justin Bieber and One Direction. You probably said they were gay. Now, they're in your beast mode gym playlist. You might have got a PS4 or Xbox One for Christmas, or if you were like me, saved up all your money from your first job to buy your very first console with your own money. GTA Online had just come out. Everyone was still playing Black Ops 2 because Ghost came out and absolutely sucked ass. FIFA Ultimate Team was peak and the World Cup was right around the corner. Gaming groups on YouTube were still going hard. Vanos and all his buddies, KYR Speedy and the crew, the Sidemen had just started. PewDiePie was still 3 years away from his biggest controversy. If you haven't put the pieces together already, that's right, we're talking about early 2014. What a time to be alive. 2014 is also that year when a lot of the most popular automotive vloggers first started gaining their stride. We had TJ Hunt, Dustin Williams, and that dude in blue all popping off. Then the likes of Adam LZ and the Stradman started gaining traction a few years later. The car scene itself was a little nuts because a lot of the cars that are actually kind of expensive now had hit pretty much the lowest point of their depreciation back then, 10 years ago, and were really cheap. Because of that, more people were well inclined to just fuck with them. You would see ridiculously stanced cars, pretty mediocre wraps because it was kind of early for those, lots of window stickers, crazy wings, tow hooks on cars that have never seen a track day in their lives, bumper clips. Hell, motherfuckers were even running fake tire lettering. And I'm not gonna lie, as a 15-year-old just getting into the scene for the very first time, I thought that stick-on lettering went fucking hard, but I'm proud to say I never succumbed to that. Smurf and WRX fucking almost got me, bro. If the shipping to Australia wasn't fucking insane, I would have had some crazy ass stickers on my fucking tires, bro. Then of course, the biggest, widest elephant in the room of that era was bolt-on fender flares. Rocket Bunny and Liberty Walk did it pretty well, but a lot of people couldn't afford those. So suddenly, everyone just thought they could do it themselves. And it became so overplayed by people doing the job so poorly that wide bodies as a whole just became synonymous with riced out builds and panel gaps wider than the canyon between a pair of fake Tatars. The thing is, it's like I said before, well-built cars like properly built Liberty Walk, Rocket Bunny, and well, I guess RWBs are always properly built. They're only built by one guy. So I guess a better phrase is cars built well with intention, I suppose. The ones that didn't cheap out and basically set the trends to begin with, those are the cars that really hold up well, even today, especially when you see them in person. I mean, I'm gonna throw up some pictures on the screen. Just look at some of these cars I saw while I was over in Japan. It's hard to really grasp how crazy they actually look in person, but trust me when I say, when you see some of these cars in the flesh with your eyeballs, it's hard not to respect them. Then, after all this jazz went on in the 2010s, a shift happened in people's taste towards the late 2010s. It was a pretty damn hard whiplash, and you could almost say the car scene overcorrected a little bit. It went from just things not quite being done right with all the bolt-on eBay fender flares to something completely different that we all currently know and love. The clean, the minimal OEM Plus look, which is pretty timeless, very inoffensive, and all around hard to go wrong with. But that's almost a little bit of a problem in and of itself. The OEM Plus look is so inoffensive that we've almost kind of lost that spice that car culture used to have. So much so that a lot of cars end up looking and sometimes nearly being the same. Which at that point, if everyone's doing the exact same thing, how does that really differentiate you from being stock? You'll always see these memes like, I don't know, what's done to your M3? Downpipe and a tune. Or even something way more generic. You know, what's done to your car? Coilovers and wheels. And don't get me wrong, there isn't anything wrong with any of these types of builds. Everyone should be able to do whatever the hell they want with their cars. If it's your daily and your only car, then yeah, don't go all out creating a massive cop magnet and just, yeah, keep as much stock as you can. Maintain that reliability. More power to you. I know that's exactly what I do because I'm not some big rich YouTuber and I've got a mortgage to pay for as well. But if I didn't, oh boy, I would be going way above and beyond what OEM Plus is. If I was a rich girl, if I had all the money in the world, you would be seeing me with a Veilside Fortune NSX, an Auto Garage TPK 964 Turbo, a monster of a 79 series, and just doing some absolutely sacrilegious things to any exotics I could get my hands on. Maybe more specifically, things like an LFA and a Pagani Zonda. But unfortunately, I'm not Gwen Stefani, so I'm definitely not a wealthy girl. And I guess therein lies the problem for me and a lot of other people. Most of us don't have all the money in the world, so doing really big irreversible mods is scary. And OEM Plus is safe because you can always revert to stock. The other problem that ties directly into this is the current price of cars themselves. The more expensive cars get, the less likely people are going to go all out and make irreversible mods to them, because they start to see these cars as an investment, and bold irreversible mods can really hurt resale value. In the early 2000s, a lot of JDM cars were super cheap, especially here in Australia, being so close to Japan. I've talked about it before, but cars like R32 and R33 GTRs were in like the 20,000 Australian dollar range. FD RX-7s were under 20k. S15s could be had for under 10k. S14s and 13s were basically paddock basher prices. I don't have a source for this last one, but I've even been told from a guy I know that a guy he knew all the way back in 2009 struggled to move their NSX for 40,000 Australian dollars. Apparently. Yes, that was a year after 2008, which may have something to do with it. But regardless, all of these cars are worth at least triple that value now. And that's mainly because of scarcity. The abundance and cheapness of them in the early 2000s meant that people fuck with them. They had fun, made them their own, and drove them daily. Some drove them harder than others and treated them like the cheap cars that they were, so plenty of them would get into accidents and just be written off over the years. Meaning, as time went on, there would be less and less of them in the market. Then you pair that with cars just not being made like that anymore, and suddenly, as we approach the mid-2010s, things start creeping back up again. Prices slowly start rising until 2020, when not only did prices already kind of seem a little bit overinflated, suddenly a global oopsie happened that caused prices to surge to astronomical heights we had never seen previously. And for the most part, these prices have never really come quite back down to what we saw pre-2020. And again, even that pre-2020 era was still quite a bit more expensive than like 2015. These prices were already skyrocketing, let alone the exponential growth. And just like with fuel prices, the rise is quick and the fall is super slow, if not non-existent. People who own these cars then, of course, saw the writing on the wall. Just comparing 2009 to 2019 prices on a lot of cars that weren't even considered collector's items at that point, still saw a big enough price increase for people to stop and think for a second. It got people thinking the longer and closer I keep these cars to stock, the higher the potential resale might be if they become collectible in the future. We saw it happen generations before with cars that our parents grew up with. They gained a really good sum of appreciation, and some of which are in the hundreds and thousands of dollars now, even though when our parents were growing up as teenagers, these were cars our parents might have even owned and only cost a couple of grand. So now it was starting to look like it was the time for that to happen to all of these 90s and 2000s cars, even though it seems so soon by comparison. I guess we all forget the early 90s is over 30 years ago now. So when you combine crazy inflation and wages just not keeping up, paired with enthusiast cars skyrocketing in price because they're getting older, lower in supply and higher in demand because manufacturers just stopped making cars like them in the early 2000s, and when they do make them, unless they're the Toyota 86/Subaru BRZ specifically, they typically have a near six-figure price tag attached. It all kind of makes sense why people want to keep these older cars as close to stock as possible and just stick with the OEM Plus look. If you don't do anything bold and can easily revert to stock, you end up with a better investment. Which, to be honest, sucks for young people trying to get into cars, because when all the enthusiasts treat their cars as investments, they don't want to lose money on them and end up treating them like people treat houses. You'd get a starter car that's in your budget and hopefully won't depreciate too much because you tried to get it close to the bottom of its depreciation curve, and maybe even on a rare circumstance, this particular car might even appreciate over time, kind of like some people saw with a lot of one-off or high-trim JDM cars. Think S2000s, Civic and Integra Type Rs, Evos, STIs, those less pricey but still slightly more sought after enthusiast cars. Then you just keep the car and drive it for a few years, and over those years build up some savings. And use your newfound savings, combined with the equity you've got in your car that hopefully stagnated in price, maybe went up a little in value, or didn't depreciate too much, so you essentially just drove it for a couple of years at no real cost besides maintenance and mods, which you would do anyway on any car, and then leverage that into a nicer car. Sure, if it stagnates or depreciates, that is amplified by inflation, but in general, if you bought a car for say 30k and can somehow still just about sell it for 30k 5 years later, that's a pretty big win. Then, so long as the car that you're aiming for didn't suddenly become far more collectible than I guess the car you already have and just skyrocket in price, you've hopefully got the money saved to move on to that. Hell, to be 100% real with you, that's how I got into my ISF, but just out of sheer luck than really any planning. It was just super convenient timing. I bought my very first car, my Hawkeye base model Impreza, for 8.5 grand back in 2016. I got the Impreza because you can't have high-powered cars when you first get your license in some states of Australia. It's a whole thing. Obviously, I spent money on it over the years, quite a bit of maintenance and mods and other things, but I'd be doing that regardless of the car. Shit's always gonna happen. 7 whole years later, I sold that exact car for 9.5 grand with 150,000 extra kilometers on it. No, I didn't make money when you factor in inflation and maintenance costs and everything else. Obviously, it would be a net negative. But at the end of the day, I was basically back where I started 7 years prior with no car and about 10k extra in cash. I just have years of savings now that I can pair with that. Conveniently enough, at that exact same time, ISFs with a build date of 2008 became legal to import into Australia from Japan. So, because of that new supply coming in, they started to depreciate quite a good bit, meaning I could take the money I got from my Subaru, as well as some of my savings over the years, and buy a nicer and cooler car. Pretty damn straightforward, but it only really works if you're buying a used car that's already hit or close to hitting the bottom of its depreciation curve with cash. If you get a loan, the interest will likely blow out the cost you're actually paying in the end, and if you buy a new car, it'll likely lose a lot of its value the second you drive it off the lot. This isn't, a couple of years ago when we had shortages and supply chain issues and etc, etc. And if you get a new car with a loan, I don't know what to tell you, man. This doesn't apply. The whole reason I brought cars as an investment up in the first place is to say, first and foremost, you should never treat cars as an investment. Always just assume a car is going to depreciate, and if it doesn't, that's a bonus. And secondly, is to say, while some people still do consider them an investment and hit you with the 1, 2, 3, 4, I know what I have marketplace ads that are quite annoying, there seems to be an increase in the number of people who aren't seeing cars as much as an investment as they are something to enjoy now, because A, life's short, drive your damn cars, and B, older Gen Z in particular, like I said before, are starting to make big boy money, so much so some of them are finally able to buy their endgame cars. This could have happened a little bit sooner if our early 20s wasn't consumed by the global rough patch and the skyrocketing car prices that ensued, but it is starting and will likely continue as Gen Z slowly become the dominating force for media and pop culture over the next decade or so, as they finally get their time in the largest generation spotlight alongside Gen Alpha. The same kind of way a lot of what was popular in the early 2000s up until the mid to late 2010s was sculpted by Gen X and Millennials. So now that Gen Z, who again still grew up on Fast and the Furious and Need for Speed and all that jazz, just at a much younger age, are starting to own these cars they grew up with and are planning on keeping them forever, they no longer care one bit about what the next owner is going to think. So the investment mindset more or less goes out the window, and being bold becomes an option once again. Does that mean prices are going to go down? Probably not as much as you'd expect, because people are now buying and holding cars. But we are seeing some slow decreases in the market due to the political and economic state of the world right now, at least if you're not in America, where prices may just go higher again. Sorry guys. Maybe it is a little sad that a lot of Gen Z's dream cars were Millennials and Gen X's fun cars they just screwed around in. But hey, it's not the early 2000s anymore and shit is just more expensive. That's how it be. I'm sure there was some dude in 2008 with an R33 GTR that cost him like under 20 grand at the time, might have looked at the brand new Lexus ISF being released in Japan and thought, damn, a luxury V8 sedan? That's pretty sweet. Shame it's got a $130,000 MSRP attached from Lexus Australia. But now it's the complete opposite, where I would absolutely love an R33 GTR, but the going rate for one is about double, if not more than double what I paid for my ISF. 90s JDM tax aside, all of these reasons I've brought up so far that stopped people from creating truly bold builds like they saw growing up in the early 2000s are slowly starting to erode away. And because of that, like I said, who knows how long ago now at the beginning of the video, we are finally so back. You've probably already seen a couple of big splashes with some really big and bold builds lately. And then a lot of those bigger bold moves then trickle down to everyone else. I'm slowly noticing more and more bold aesthetic choices. Some people crafting near damn show cars that you can actually just daily. And I'm seeing less and less motherfuckers bitch and whine about the car not having enough horsepower to back its looks up. Life really does feel so good when you don't have some little bitch in your ear whining about horsepower numbers. Because remember, we aren't up here on the bell curve anymore, and we know that horsepower numbers don't mean everything. The worst part about it though, is that I kinda have to thank electric cars for that. Once Tesla started doing crazy numbers and we all got to witness how insane instant torque can be, suddenly a lot of people started to care more about how cars used to look aesthetically and also how they felt to drive, rather than just how fast they could be. Because one thing most of us agree on is that electric cars definitely don't spark joy, and the vast majority of them at the moment just look like a glorified appliance. They serve their purpose as daily commuters getting people from A to B, but really, there's no soul there. They're not built for enthusiasts, they aren't drivers' cars, they're built for people who really would rather do anything other than drive. Even one of the biggest tech YouTubers in the world agrees and sold his Tesla Plaid for a 992 Turbo S. Having the absolute fastest car possible and squeezing every single little bit you can out of a motor, so much so that it just becomes this horrible burden to own that you never drive, really isn't necessary anymore. Especially when you pour all of that money in and a stock Tesla is just going to be faster than you. I still do appreciate heavy power builds and I absolutely love seeing them like on the drag strip, but I wouldn't say that's representative of car culture as a whole. It's its very own standalone niche and shouldn't be some sort of standard that everyone holds every street car to. It is cool as fuck if you're rich enough to deal with those kind of things, sure, but most of us aren't, and most of us aren't racers, because at the end of the day, man, this isn't Fast and the Furious and you should be keeping that kind of driving to the track. It's not cool to race in public spaces and just fucking drive like a cockhead around residential areas. I will accept some lost traction, we'll say, in industrial complexes at 3 AM when there's literally no one around. Just, you know, there's a time and place. Don't be fucking stupid. We should all know this by now. So when building for speed typically just isn't worth it anymore because you're generally outclassed by electric, fun handling, and of course, old aesthetics start to come back into the fray. Just maybe not to the same extent it once was in the aesthetics department, which is okay, honestly. It just means that we're actually learning from the past rather than simply repeating it. 20-inch rims on the lowest profile tires possible is kinda goofy, but chrome in general, gorgeous. What we've landed in now is a really sweet middle ground, where people are slowly becoming more bold with their cars once again, but are also building shit really well and keeping stuff super clean. It's like if you dropped someone from today, back in 2003, and told them that they had to build a car that would fit into a Fast and the Furious movie without that same car looking stupidly dated by 2025 standards. It's bold and loud and a little wild, but not ridiculous. Personally, I really enjoy seeing some of the more intricate and dedicated shit in particular. Like, I don't know if you've seen it when that one guy fixed the new M2 front bumper. Don't get me wrong, I like the original, but it was really cool to see someone take this problem they had with the car into their own hands and make a really good looking, completely new front end with older BMW design language. I like seeing more people embrace engraving. I'm seeing it on engine bays and recently even on wheel lips. I like seeing more people choose bold primary colors and pastels and anything that really matches and complements the car nicely. Please don't put hot pink wheels on your bright blue car. Just do a bit of research into color theory and you can make something look amazing. I even like seeing something as simple as those translucent vinyl graphics that kind of give off that early 2000s flair without being too over the top and tacky. And obviously, I really love seeing the artistry that goes into some of the more boutique body kits. Things like Liberty Walk, RWB, and of course, Veilside. All of this, any modification you do, from power to handling to aesthetics, is all a form of artistry and self-expression being shown through the vehicle of a car. Even to get a clean OEM plus or like slightly stanced look, it takes trial and error and a lot of effort to get your fitment dialed in the way some of these guys do. But it really is nice just to see so many people take back that spice that minimalism really took out of our lives over the years. Maybe one day we'll even look back at certain builds and design choices the same way people look back at millennial grey houses. Maybe we already are. Like, personally, I reckon just going for stock standard black rims is pretty much the equivalent of the whole starter home laminate grey floors. It's just one of those things and taste preferences that you usually hear and see from someone that isn't really that into cars. Not to be all gatekeepy and shit, but you know the type of person, like they could never even name a single wheel manufacturer, but they'll see any car on the street and be like, oh yeah man, that would look sick with black wheels. For years now, we have leaned into minimalism and car culture has followed suit. Low-key mods, OEM plus aesthetics, and subtlety was the trend. But now, we're witnessing a resurgence of passion and expression in modern pop culture, and car culture is following suit. Enthusiasts are once again embracing bold styling, statement pieces, vibrant colors, and intricate craftsmanship. Something Veilside has always been about. This renewed appetite for bolder cars might also explain why Veilside made their resurgence in 2022 with the Supra kit, and even in 2023 with their kit for the new Z. They're as polarizing as ever, and well, I kind of like the Z kit, but for me, nothing has quite come close to the Veilside Fortune NSX. That's right, we've come full circle to why I wanted to make this video in the first place. This kit is one a lot of people didn't even know about. I even still see some people mistake it for the Veilside RX-7. It was a car that was in Tokyo Drift, but one that was tucked away in the back. It's not everyone's cup of tea. Some people even say it ruins the body lines of the NSX. And when NSXs are six-figure cars in and of themselves now, it does become harder and harder to justify butchering it to create one of these. So I genuinely applaud anyone who has the balls to take a car like the NSX, that is genuinely such a gorgeous car already, and do something this insane to it. That bold move in and of itself is part of the appeal. It gives the car a certain presence, this aura. Standing out amongst regular traffic is one thing. Standing out amongst some of the coolest builds in Tokyo, that's something else entirely. It's hard to describe just how hard I fell for this car, but I figured that actions would speak louder than words, and this wall, I guess, has kind of remained empty for long enough. So let's go on a bit of an adventure. I decided to take that moment when I first saw that car at the first car meet I'd ever been to in Japan, print it, frame it, and hang it right here, where you'll see it in every video going forward, and where it can continue to inspire me every single day to be bold.